You know what? I think the first painter ever might have looked just a little bit like this.
Let's dance.
Welcome on Laughing Museums, my name is Cedric and today I wanted to talk about something very important and I couldn't find, so I'm just going to talk about something a little bit silly but yet that is very dear to me. That is the origin of paintings. As I'm writing a book on paintings right now, it's even more important to talk about it, right? I just came back from holiday and this summer I went to see the famous Lascaux grotto, 600 painting. Well, it's reproduction because it was closed to the public in 1983. It was discovered around 1940 and by teenagers. I think the story is quite funny, but that's not my point today. My point is like, why did men 17,000 BC decided to paint? So like, you know, around 19 to 20,000 years ago, decided to go and paint something like, and I'm cheating on this one, something like horrocks, and I'm gonna put them some here, right there. I remember the horses were fantastic. They were painted not only on the wall but even on the ceiling, which is making you, they call it the Sistine Chapel of cave art, and you really have a feeling in that reproduction cave which is looking exactly the same. They use exactly the same technique. And let's talk about the technique to start with. They have some little bones that they use to blow the paint, you know, those maybe reverse hand stuff like that, right? And what is interesting with that is like it took probably hundreds of years. So specialists are not really agreeing on if it's all on a certain short period of time or if it's actually spreading different generation of artists on different time. And even another thing, remember I started that video by trying to imitate, sorry for that poor imitation, a cave artist, right? But what you need to know is like, we always imagine the cave artist is a caveman, but by the size of this reverse hand we realize it might be teenagers, kids, or even women. So the first artist might be men, women, or even a kid. And if something is true, is that kids all like to draw, right? Or at least being creative in any kind of artistic way. And I was mind blown by those horrocks, by those horses. Some are called unicorns, there's stags as well. I'm cheating again, two-horned animal. What else? Well, so I talk about the horrocks, horses, several stags. That was really swimming across a river. That was like kind of a super unique. You also have felines, which is very good. Is you know, you don't know, two male bison and some sort of a human having a congregation. This says, and I was reading an article of the Britannica on the subject, it says that it's probably being interpreted as a shamanistic, is it that, like shamanistic? Yeah, shamanistic scene. And it's funny enough because when we don't have an explanation in artistry and in cave art in particular, when we don't have an explanation for mostly almost everything in life, we very quickly ended up with having kind of a mystical explanation. You know me, I'm fascinated with Catholic painting, and I have a personal fascination for Renaissance painting, so I'm all for this, of course. But when you get to that, I like to be like super scientific, and that is why the more and more discovery specialists of that cave art period are making, they realize it's probably less and less shamatic, less and less mystical, but probably very down to earth, right? And some of the theologians I've been studying in the beginning of my university years used to think that, yeah, of course, in the beginning, human beings didn't have any explanation for a lot of phenomenon, and then they get to find a mystical explanation, which is fantastic. It's still true today. You find a lot of comfort in religion, and faith is something very fascinating, and that should be studied for a long time to go. But, and that's very important, on cave art for too much time I think it became all about being shamanistic explanation or kind of mystical stuff like that, right? When it's mostly very simple explanation. What I mean is there's a few things that really surprised me in Lascaux. Number one is the quality of the detail. The quality of the detail. They got only 3 colors, which is brown, black, and white. I don't get too much in the detail of the technique because even when the guy told me in the cave, we were bored to death about that, right? But it's fascinating mostly for specialists. What is interesting is we just want to see the painting, and it's massive. The format is massive. It's like really the word Sistine Chapel of Cave Art is not a big word. It's really what the feeling you have. You're surrounded by stuff. And then you get it. I was doing Lascaux 2, and then when you get to Lascaux 2, you have a very close passage. It was mostly made into really deep cave, all in the black. And that's why they make you the visit with a torch in the beginning, so you have a feeling of what it looks like with the torch. And I'm going to try to illustrate that, as you're not allowed to take any pictures in Lascaux. So number one was the amount of detail. It's a very detailed set. Number two, and that's probably what amazed me the most, was perspective. Yes, you heard me well. Perspective. Some animals, and I'm going to put an example of that right above there. Some animals are actually having atmospherical perspective. They're getting a lighter light, and they're having like a smaller size. And number three is probably my personal fascination, is animals that we can't recognize, right? So some of these animals did not actually exist back in the days, right? For example, I told you there's 2 male bisons, and I'm gonna put it right here. And there's some hunting scenes about that, and we know that we're not having the technical capacity to hunt those animals because they were too big. They were actually using their horns, their skin, etc., but only when they find them dead. So why do they represent hunting scenes of animals they could not actually do? So it's kind of a phantasma. So I say it's mythical. Maybe it's just something, I don't know. Maybe it's just fiction, as simple as that. And that's what those caves are for interesting, because it tells you about fiction and the need of human beings to have fiction in their life. Another finally little detail, but that really strikes me in the cave, and that's why I really invite you to visit the cave. I visited some caves in Indonesia, in Sulawesi Island. I visited some caves when I was in India as well. It was fascinating. There's a lot of engraving, and we don't really know what it means, if it's a language, if it's numbers, whatever it is, but you'll find that on different places on Earth and exactly the same symbols. That is mind-blowing. Another thing, and I'm going to stop right there to talk about Lascaux. Another thing that really interests me and really strikes me, and I was not expecting that, and that's why specialists are a bit confused about if it's only one period of time, many period of time, one artist, different artist, etc. The question is, yeah, there's actually animals, and I'm going to try to find an example of that as well. I couldn't take any pictures again, so I'm going to try to look that one. There's animal painting over other animals, so they painted over animals. Did they do that on purpose, or is that like a graffiti artist who painted over another graffiti artist? You see, I have a huge respect for street art and an interest as well, but you see my point, right? Or was it made over time and they just wanted to paint there because it's been painted before, and then they realized, okay, we want to paint there as well, stuff like that. But usually we realize it's making sense. Those animals are not painting over each other for no reason. And sometimes they reuse a piece of an animal to make another piece of another animal using something like his leg or something. And that was very creative. The overall feeling when you are inside Lascaux Grotto is really like being so close to the origin of art and painting, and you feel like, wow, this is so amazing just to be here and just to feel that place. I did a lot of hiking around that during my time there, because I stayed for like almost 2 weeks in Dordogne in the region of Périgord, and I'm gonna put that on a map right there. and it's fantastic to feel like you're walking in the steps of these first human beings on the planet, or at least the first human being that decided to make cave art until we find older. We know the older we found is actually in Sulawesi in Indonesia, when I have the luck to go, but before the cave we discovered, so I haven't seen these caves per se. And that I'm always saying that because I take no pride that those caves are in France. There's some in Altamira in Spain that are very, very famous in the second half of the 20th century. So these caves are everywhere. They're fantastic material for art historian. And I really invite you, if you have some around your area, as old as you can go, just look at it, because it's a really, really good way to appreciate modern contemporary art. Some people, some contemporary artists, some modern art artists got a massive inspiration from these guys all over the planet. Thank you so much for watching. This is Laughing Museums, my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for subscribing, for liking, for sharing. If you want to support the channel, please do not hesitate to buy my book on the Louvre. It's just right there, so you're both supporting me, the channel, and you have a 250 pages book or ebook with 80 drawings that I made just for you guys. Thank you so much. You can also book an experience in the Louvre, or I'm happening to experience here on the Riviera around Chagall and Matisse, two fantastic artists as well. I'm also giving art history lessons online. It's an Airbnb experience online as well. So you can find all the details about all this in the description below that video. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget, whatever you do, if you're not doing it with a smile, well, you're doing it wrong.